This is Peter Casper at 7 o'clock, calling the Board of Selectmen to order. And if all those that are present could join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Diane, I'll read the public comment. If you're okay with that. Section 3 on our agenda is public comment. This section of the agenda is reserved for persons in attendance who wish to briefly address the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance. In this case, the board's request that a person's comments be limited to a single period lasting 3 minutes or less. While the board respects the right of the public to provide comment, this time is not intended for open discussion or a board response. Residents who wish to request a dialogue should simply make arrangements through the town manager's office or through either of the chairs of the boards that are present tonight. Comments should be related to agenda items. So with that said, is there, Donna, anyone online who wishes to make a public comment?
There is no one online at this time.
Gentlemen, you know the drill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Adam Hoffman.
There's a button you can press, the green, or they go help.
Once the green's on your,
Nope. One more.
you have a green light?
Test it. There you go, you're on.
Okay, my apologies. All right, thank you. My name is Adam Hoffman, 500 Hope Valley Road. First, I'd like, even though it's not necessarily, education is not necessarily the focus tonight, it is maybe timely because if you've been following the state news, they are discussing special education funding. So I've heard the governor vetoed some additional special education funding that was voted by the legislature in a bipartisan manner. The news I'm hearing today is that there is some sort of agreement to reinstate the extra special education funding. And I would encourage us all to contact our representation in the legislature to make sure that any additional votes that are needed go through for town special education funding. This is good for Hebron because in a small town, the special education costs can be very volatile with the enrollment of the school. State funding reduces this volatility for the towns and makes it easier for us to budget. The state can take the volatility better than we can as a small town in Hebron. Second, less urgently, thanks everyone for all of your hard work so far on the budget. I appreciate it. As we're going through this process, it might help the public to have a key to decipher the department codes on the line items at the budget. For instance, 1001, 1010, and so forth down the road. It will help us better understand what's going on in the line items. And to be completely frank with you, last year I guessed. So as I'm going through the budget, it's helpful for me to think of the budget in terms of the costs to the ordinary family, which I calculate from the medium house. And I usually come to the rule of thumb that $1 million of budget is worth about, up or down in the budget, is worth about $300 to your medium house. I don't know if that's helpful for you, but I hope I can be helpful. I also finally want to support repaving where it's necessary. I know at least one member of these boards may think it's self-serving to promote the repaving of Hope Valley, and that would be an honorable thing to be careful of, but it's warranted. You can absolutely promote the repaving of Hope Valley. I am for that as well. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for attending. Any other public comment? Good. Okay. All right, that moves us, thank you very much. It moves us in to section 4 on our agenda, which is our town manager's proposed fiscal year 2025, 2026 budget presentation. I turn it over to our town manager, Mr. Tierney.
No drum roll.
Wait, hold on. Turn it over to my town. There you go. I always wanted to use that.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. For you that don't know me out on the internet or if you're zooming in, how many people do we have with us, Donna? A lot?
Community Voice Channel and Kathy Williams.
Okay. I'm Andrew Tierney, the town manager for the town of Hebron. And we're going to present the 25-26 budget. This letter is addressed to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance of the town of Hebron. Dear members of Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, pertinent to section 902C of the town charter, I'm presenting the town manager's proposed fiscal year 2025-26 budget totaling $42,927,020. The expenditure budget as presented is a 4.47% increase, or a $1,836,239 more than the fiscal year of the 24-25 budget. The town manager has reduced the department head budget requests in the town government budget by $2,806,807. Town manager is recommending the following funding allocations to contribution to CIP, $564,736. Contribution to open space at $100,000, and capital projects from $10,000 to $75,000 at $467,040. Town manager is recommending a CIP budget of $892,534. This proposal supports the town's immediate needs of maintaining infrastructure and equipment to adequately and save lives. The CIP budget falls short of addressing all capital needs of the town, and alternate funding sources are currently being considered to address the overall capital needs of the town of Hebron and the Board of Education. The Hebron Board of Education's budget, as presented, is a 5.75% increase, or a $786,051 for a total budget of $14,499,965. The Rand Board of Education budget as it stands today is $32,606,899, or a 2.56% increase, excuse me, which includes $565,487 in a CIP budget. Hebron student population at RAM, the town's portion, is 51.95%, which translates to an increase of $1,073,621 to the Hebron, for a total levy amount of $16,560,224. The increase to the town of Hebron has been reduced by a credit from the prior year's surplus in the amount of $379,060. The October 2024 grand list has decreased by $12,604,866, or down by a 1.35%. With the budget as presented, this translates to a mill rate of 38.93 for real estate and personal property, and the cap on the motor vehicle is at 32.46. As you review the budget, please keep in mind the fluid document and numbers will change over the next couple of months. The proposed budget is based on information available today, with placeholders for unknown or estimate amounts. Please refer to the attached executive summary for highlights of the town manager's proposed budget. At this time, I'd like to thank the department heads and the boards of education for their cooperation preparing the department's budgets. Also, we have listed as an email address, hebronbudget@hebronct.com. It's been set up to receive public comment and input. Emails received will be forwarded to the boards of selectmen, finance, and education. Public participation at all meetings is encouraged. All March budget meetings will be held at the Douglas Library Community Room. Budget information and key dates are available on the Hebron's website at the listed below, http://hebronct.com/budget-information. We are working to prepare a budget which reflects the town's needs and maintains a high level of town-provided services and educational excellence. The budget referendum vote is on Tuesday, May 6, 2025, at 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Hebron Elementary School. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to present this proposal. We look forward to a challenging but successful budget season. Sincerely, Andrew J. Tierney, Town Manager. I'll just go through the next page and then we can get into the PowerPoint because it's just going to be redundant if we go through the rest of this because it's going to be in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
But we'll go through this next page. The Town Manager's proposed fiscal year 25-26 totals $42,927,020. This is an increase of $1,836,239 over the current year's budget, or a 4.47% more than the current expenditures. And there you have listed there the town. Well, like I said, this is going to be a slide in the presentation, so we could either just go to the presentation or and also the drivers are in the presentation too, so we can just if you're okay with the
Yeah, let's do that.
switch it over. Been a long day. All right. Thank you for your patience. So Donna has informed me that there's a delay on the computer. So Peter, you don't have to say next slide, please. Just be patient.
Okay. I can't see them, but yes, okay.
All right, with that being said, we'll go right to the page number 2. So the proposed budget up top is what we just discussed, the $42,927,020. I just stated what that was and what the percentage is over the current year's budget. So this is a breakdown of the general government, $11,916,831. Hebron Board of Education is $14,449,965. And the RAM budget is $16,560,224. And that's the net number for RAM. And that's, this budget is less than last year's increase at this time. Next, we have the proposed expenditures, increases and decreases. You can see as we go down the right-hand side, the town government is a 5.54% change, increase. Contribution to capital improvement is down at $611,998, or minus a 52.01%. Contribution to open space, $100,000. Contribution to capital projects, that's up this year. There was a lot of requests. So that's up. But then you'll see conservation to reval. We have enough money put away for that, so there's not a contribution to that. And then debt service, the numbers reflect there as a decrease. So if you want to look at the bottom in the box, total town government subtotal is a 0.20%. As listed below, the Hebron Board of Education, the RAM without debt and CIP, then the RAM CIP added in, and then the RAM debt. And that gets you to the total of the general government is a 4.47%. Last year, we were looking at a 5.8. The town government budget drivers and initiatives included in the budget proposal are the red dots, contractual salary increases and compensation adjustments, state of Connecticut minimum wage and paid sick leave, addition of a SRO for the Hebron Board of Education, Electricity rate increase affecting all departments. Fire department staffing and support. Support for a WPCA administrative position. Senior center clerical position. Grant funding had ended, so she's looking to add somebody. And then the RAM levy. Request not recommended for funding was a full-time position in the building department, position in the finance department, position in the assessor's office, and then Sunday hours at the Douglas Library. Okay. Capital expenditures, the CIP general government contribution of $564,736. That's over the $75,000 threshold. Net capital expenditures, which are $10,000 to $75,000, is $467,040. Capital expenditures, here's the list of the 10 to 25. Under Public Works, there's a culvert that's going to be relined on Wellswood. They're looking for a crew cab pickup. That's a low number because we've been buying vehicles from state surplus. So that's normally probably an $80,000 ticket item, but we've done very well in the last couple of years. So we're going to try to continue to do so. And there's a transfer station container. Those are the dumpsters that the garbage and bulky waste go into. Those are getting, we try to replace one every couple of years. Under the fire department, he had originally tried to get this through ARPA. He's looking for ductless splits and HVAC for Company 1. And Holmatro, I don't know how to say that.
Holmatra.
How's that, Dan?
Holmatra.
Holmatra Tamba rescue tools for Company 2. And the fire stations need new alarm systems. So that's all 3 stations, I believe, at that 74,471. A lot of rolling stock in there. So we got to make sure we have the fire alarm working. Replacing of 2 trucks at Parks and Recreation. Once again, this is hopefully we can get something reduced at state surplus. That's why you're looking at $40,000 for 2 trucks. The Veterans Parks upgrade at $65,000. That's something that's been needed for a while. We really need to figure out what we're doing over there. We added a lot of infrastructure and we don't have any mapping and stuff of that, electrical lines, underground stuff. So we need to get that mapped and blueprinted so we don't dig up what we install. Building and planning and health is a Village Square market review. The Yaps was a donation. That's off of Church Street. That's down in the woods. That was a house that we had gotten the property and the house needs to be raised. So that's the money to do that. Hebron Center water supply test wells. That's one of the biggest things for our economic development. We need to, we're going to be drilling the well off of Keeney Road for the dog park. That'll give us some insight on water quality and quantity, but there's other work that we have to do. We have a consultant that we hired and they've pinpointed some other areas where we should do some exploratory wells and try to help our water situation in the center of town. So that's what that money's for. And then there's landscape improvements. A lot of these parks and just infrastructure in the center of town, it needs to be maintained. It's starting to get, sidewalks are starting to crack up a little bit, and the landscaping needs to be, beautification kind of stuff. But St. Peter's Field, Gilead Hill School, Hebron Elementary School, Hebron Green lighting, electrical upgrades. That's another thing for $25,000, with a total capital expenditure of $467,040. CAP recommendations, including Whole Valley Road and the road resurfacing and road improvements. Douglas Library parking lot. Hebron Green design services. That's for a steep match that we've already got. So that's our portion. Horton House improvements. That's structural. Replace the ambulance stretchers and stretcher lifts. Parks and Recreation master plan is in there. And then senior center parking, drainage, and repaving, 2nd year funding. So that total CIP budget is 892,534. CIP revenue recommendations. Balance from previous appropriations, 184,169. LoSup funding is 102,229. Funding from other sources, public safety fund, 11,400. Interest is 30,000. So general fund contribution would be 564, 736 for total revenues of 892,534. Hebron Board of Education shows you the difference for fiscal years 2024, 25, and then what we're proposing. They're proposing for 25, 26. It's an increase of 786,051 or a 5.75. Hebron Board of Education, town provided services for the Hebron Board of Education is in-kind services. We were asked to do this last year, so we just continued it. School resource officers, additional police coverage, snow plowing includes labor and materials, ground maintenance including labor and materials, AHM youth and family service budget allocation, capital projects funding through CIP and ARPA funds, and active assailant insurance, which we pick up right now until they can pick it up on their own. We're covering them. Then this slide here will show you the RAM levy, proposed RAM budget, and it gives you the fiscal years. You'll see in the middle column, the change is 813,112, 2.56%. Hebron's change based on the 25-26 levy is 51.95%. So that's 1,042,390. Hebron levy for fiscal year 25 is totals 16,939,284 with the RAM minus the RAM credit 379,060. The net RAM levy for 25-26 is 16,560,224. That includes the 565,487 in the CIP budget for RAM. The next slide, it kind of explains how the levy works per town. It's a levy calculation for the 222-23 right up to this year, 25-26 budget season. So it lists Andover, Hebron, and Marlboro. As you can see, the other two towns are going down. We're going up. And not only does that affect this, it affects our AHM contribution because it's based off the same calculation. Here's an expenditure history from 22-23 up to the fiscal year 25-26. All the way over to the right. Let's see where we're at on our town government. Contributions to CIP, contributions to capital projects. No reval this year. Open space at 100,000, and then the debt services listed. And the Hebron Board of Education, the RAM levy, and the operating and the debt for the total budget that comes out to that number 42,927,020. And now we're back into the colors. Bar charts, we like charts and pies. It kind of gives you a historical data view at a glance. So there's your expenditure history. Up on there, you can see it's pretty consistent. Next, you'll see the pie. 25-26 budget overview. You can see the RAM Board of Ed at 38, the town at 28%, and Hebron Board of Ed at 34%. And then there's some smaller slivers in there with the town debt and the capital expenditures in the open space. Both revenues, these are increases and decreases compared to last year, 24-25 to 25-26. General government budget of 5.44%. Other state revenues, 31.52%. ECS and special ed grant funding, that's down, at least as of right now, minus 4.32%. Debt management contribution, that's down. Fund balance contribution is down. Back taxes and liens, we don't have any expected to come in. So there's nothing to be listed there. So at the bottom, that's what gives us that percentage of a 4.47% increase. Just having a little technical difficulty.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Back on track. Thank you, Donald. So this is the October 1st, 2024 grand list. Shows you the increases and decreases. Decreases are in red. You'll see the motor vehicle is down 13,981,240. That's down 13.32%. And then, sorry, that was the motor vehicle. I apologize. And then you'll see the total is down another 1.35%. We always like to see that go up, but in the last couple of years, it's been decreasing, unfortunately. Next, you'll see the grand list profile. And as I stated on the earlier slide, up on the top of those last blue lines, you'll see it was down 0.12%, and this year's down 1.35%. There's your mill rate calculation. This is to help people try to understand how we get at the mill rate and what it's worth. So the grand list, October 1st through 2024 is what we use. Real estate and personal property, 832,609,695. Last Board of Assessment appeals or adjustments, 300,000. Reduction to the grand list, adjusted grand list, October 1st, 2024, 832,309,695. That gives you a mill value of 832,310. And the mill rate based on the 98.50% collection rate is 819,825, or it translates into a mill rate for proposed budget as the 38.93. This shows you how to calculate the mill. We try to put that in every year. Once again, shows you how you get to the 38.93. And then it shows you how to apply it towards your real estate. Assessed value times mill rate equals your tax. So there's the Medane house, I believe. That number is, Donna?
Yes.
The 248,360 is the house we normally use. Out of the three, that's the middle of the road. And you times it by the 0.3893, and the taxes would be 9,669. Once again, proposed calculation for personal property and real estate. List proposed 25, 26 increases. Those are the three houses I described. So if you have the house for a market value of 235,300, you can expect your taxes, if this budget were to pass the way it's presented tonight, would go up $730. The middle of the road house that we discussed, if it's worth $354,800, you're looking at a $1,101 increase over last year's taxes. And the same thing for the bottom one, $1,902 over. If that were to pass today, I believe we're going to do some work to try to get that number down. So I don't want to scare anybody too much tonight. Then the mill rate calculation for the motor vehicle, grand list October 1st, 2024, 90,994,230. Last Board of Assessment appeals adjustment, 400,000. Reduction to grand list, adjusted grand list October 1st, 90,594,230. So motor vehicle, that's a mill rate of 90.594. Mill value is based upon 98.50% collection rate, and the mill rate per proposed budget is capped at 32.46 for motor vehicle. There's your mill rate history. The asterisks on the bottom show what the reval year was. We got one coming up next year, right? Revale,
27?
Could be.
right,
Six.
Donna? Revale next year? 26, yeah. And then this is just explanatory of the budget process. Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance review the budget during the month of March. Board of Selectmen make recommendations to the Board of Finance by March 31st. Second will conduct public hearings Tuesday, March 25th, 2027 p.m. in the Douglas Library Community Room. There's the budget process. The Board of Finance will hold a public hearing on the budget. The Board of Finance recommended budget no later than the third Tuesday in April. The budget hearing is scheduled Thursday, April 10th, 2025, 7 p.m. here at the Douglas Library Community Room. The budget process is Tuesday, May 6th. Hebron Elementary School from 6 in the morning until 8 p.m. And then there's the list of the schedule. March 11th, we have the fire department coming, I believe. Right, Donna?
Fire department's coming on the 11th.
Okay. And then the boards of ed are coming on the 18th. And the March 25th Board of Selectmen public hearing, outstanding information, revenues overview and discussion, board deliberations, finalized Selectmen's 25-26 budget and CIP budget. And then Thursday, March 27th, budget workshops, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance at Douglas Library, review overview, discussion budget deliberations, finalized Selectmen's 25-26 budget and CIP budget. So if there's anything anybody on any board wants to see from a department that's not listed, let us know so we can notify them and we'll bring them in. Information and comments, the selectmen have established an email address. For the budget comments, hebronbudget@hebronct.com. Comments will be forwarded to the boards of selectmen, finance and education. Budget information is available in the town clerk's office at Douglas Library, the senior centers, and at https://hebronct.com/budget.information/ we want to hear from you. Now, open it up for questions.
I have a few questions. I think they're all pretty easy. A, on the RAM levy. I know that Columbia students have been invited to attend RAM. Would that at all alter our percentage, or would that just probably lower everybody's dollar amount fairly equally?
It would lessen the overall number, and how that's being projected for Columbia students coming to RAM is it's going to start with very small amount at first. They're going to start at like I think it's starting at a freshman. So I think there's like possibly 9 kids coming. Once it's here for a while and they get all the 4 grades, they're looking to possibly between 30 to 40 kids at a rate whatever was negotiated. But in talking to the superintendent, that would be I don't want to use the word credit, but it would be a reduction to all the towns that are presently make up the RAM levy now. So just take it off the top. Whatever that money comes into is revenue.
Okay, and is that amount basically figured out what each student's cost is, and then they just pass that on? Or do we know how that amount is
Yeah,
calculated?
it's a negotiated amount. It's without me being poised in all the aspects of that. I don't want to make a statement that Columbia is not going to pay as much as we're paying per student, but there's reasons behind that because we already had to have the administration and some other stuff. So it's at a little bit of a reduced rate, but it's the norm with negotiating with schools that come into regional school facilities. So when Colin's here, you can ask him that question when he comes to present. He'll have that information.
Okay. Well, my next question on the pie chart, that is fairly similar to what we've had in past years percentage wise, or do we
Changed a
see
little.
where that's changing?
Changed a
or-
little bit. Yeah,
Okay,
just a little bit.
perfect. And then the motor vehicle, I believe you had already stated that the state had set an arbitrary, 32 point or
Whatever.
something
Yeah, whatever.
percent mill rate. So as a result, the downside is that allows us to collect less on motor vehicles, which means that we have to collect more on other property taxes to make up that difference in dollars.
Yeah, there's two things. They capped it at the 32 point, was it 85? But the other thing is they also changed how you value vehicles as well. So those two things are affecting the overall amount of money that would come to the town through that.
Thank you.
I just have more of a logistical question than anything. In years past, I had requested a list of town salaries and
Yep.
showing the increase from year to year, just a sheet with town salaries. I don't see that in my book.
It's in the book. Don will direct you right to that.
That would be great.
Tab 2,
Yep.
1,000,
Yep.
right after page 1, you'll find 4 sheets,
There it is. Perfect.
current year,
Okay.
last
Yeah.
year's.
Okay.
That should give you the last 2 years.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
those are all full.
Yep. Got it.
Mel.
The district, out-of-district students coming from, at this point, Columbia. Is that going to be a credit, or is that going to be a reduction in this year's budget or in the next year's budget? I know that was a discussion, and the amount was in the $15,000 for students.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers. I think you're correct in a ballpark there, but Colin will be able to answer that. And I don't have the answer if it's going to affect this year's or next year's. I'd have to ask him.
I'm on page, on slide 16, and we talk about the backpack food, the same collection of backpack food, the same in 25, 26, they were estimated to be 24, 25. Is that a real number, or how much do we have outstanding in backpack, if you know that?
I don't know off the top of my head what we have in total outstanding taxes, but over the past 5 or 6 years, it's been hovering around 400,000. And when we put these numbers together, we spoke to the tax collector, and she's very confident we're going to hit that mark.
Thank you.
Do you mind? So Andy, just question on, I'm looking at slide 4, where it's the budget drivers and initiatives. So for the requests not recommended for funding, just curious if you can give, why they were requested, like the position, full-time position in building department, part-time in finance department, why they were requested and why we're not recommending funding on those ones.
So these came from, these came from the department heads or those departments to the first session, which sits with myself, the town manager. And as we're going through the budget, I have a bad habit of working backwards. So I look at where we're at and talking with the chairman of the board of selectmen, this is a needs versus wants. In a perfect world, we'd love to be able to fund all of those. We're looking at an SRO position that's in the budget presently, and then there's talk about possibly adding a facilities maintenance person, and then unfortunately our WPCA, we share. Well, we're going to give a contribution to them to try to bring the salary of that up. The person that did that has retired, but he's doing it remotely from Florida. And we really need to get that in house. They're starting to get some big projects coming down the pipe at WPCA. We really have to have somebody in charge of that. We actually might even be getting a request from the town planner and myself to come to the Board of Selectmen to look at how that's governed. And I've had conversations last week with some of the towns that make up. So right now, without getting off topic quickly, that WPCA position, the sewer is mostly Colchester and East Hampton. And then we're like subsidiaries. We pay for the flows going through Colchester, but those formulas are old and the expenses are going way, way up. And I've expressed concerns with the first selectman and the town manager of Colchester and East Hampton that I think it's time to regionalize so we have a more of a voice on the board on these discussions and these repairs and bringing in third-party companies to overview what they're proposing instead of just flying blind because we're talking a lot of money. So where we're sitting and how we're operating right now is not really functioning very well for us. So we need to, that's one position that I recommend that we keep in there and try to offset. We're not paying for the whole position, but we're want to throw some money at it to bring the hourly rate up so we can even get a part-time person to actually fulfill that position. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just hoping to just understand, if the position in the building department was what was, because I watched the recording from Thursday. I know there was discussion on facilities. So I didn't know if that was,
No,
the
so I'll tell
same
you,
thing or a similar.
you want to break it down even more. So the building position in Hebron, building official does planning and zoning enforcement as well. And in this day and age, a lot of the professional building officials don't really like doing the zoning enforcement part of it. So now you have to be certified. You got to take classes. You got to go to the state. That's new. So the planning directors decided that, maybe it's time to try to add a position to take that burden off the building officials' hands. So that was the request for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
If I could, I'd like to talk really briefly about my favorite topic every budget season, which, as you know, is the unassigned fund balance.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if you can just give us a brief overview of how that's looking and I see it on page 34, but just wondering if you had any additional.
Yeah, I can let Lori speak to that. There's been some activity where we did a forecast and now it's back up to, I'll let her answer that. We put that in the book so everybody would see that.
Thanks for the question. Yes, we are all trying to keep the unassigned fund balance at least 18%, and you are correct. We have not filed or finished our audit this year, but our preliminary end of the year figures indicate that we should have about a $900,000 positive results to operations, which would go back into fund balance. And that's why you see the unaudited assigned balance at almost 24%.
We wanted to put that in there just because of that.
Sure.
So you can see it.
Great.
One thing I would like to mention on that is in this budget with the proposed mill increase as stated today, without talking to Diane Del Russo, we haven't suggested using any money for offsetting revenues to come out of. So that I figured this is better for me to present to you guys. You guys are the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen. Let's get some fingerprints on it, collaborate and come up with something to try to get it more palatable. But for tonight's, I didn't have any conversations with Diane. I'm sure we will at some point, but there's no offsetting revenues as far as, unassigned or debt management in here at this present time.
I had a question about legal services, the town council services. So there is and this is on page 2 of the proposed 25-26 budget. If anybody wants to join along. So the proposed budget for this coming year is 40,000. Does that take into account the Dollar General situation and whatever council we're going to have to need for that?
Yeah. So great question. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we a budget is like a guide. So we look at what we spent last year and we look at the actuals and see where we went. Knowing we have some of these things coming down. Keith witnessed me sitting at a very expensive table this morning in Hartford all morning with the town attorney. So you never know what you're going to get faced. So it's like, I don't want to use the word crapshoot, but I will. So it's, we more look at last year's and then the actual and what we see coming down the pipe. And I've actually had some conversations with the town attorney regarding the Dollar General and to keep us abreast as we go and what I think that's going to look for and what costs are going to look at. But
Obviously, we don't know, but it could be significant, right? I mean, it could be, that line item could double, right?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, that could be. If it were to go to fruition, I think I think just to deal with it is like, could be 20 to 30,000.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Back to WPCA, are they scheduled to be presenting in the next week or two?
No, do you know, I gave him, we have the budget. Do we put that in the book?
It is in the book.
We put their budget in the book. I'll talk to Kevin to
Is
propose.
that the single line, the single year? The budget I saw had no comparison year to year.
Yeah, I don't think we compared it to year. I think we just put in what Kevin gave us for the book for this year. And like I said, with him being remote, I got that time to put in a book, but we can have them present or he can present.
We've been asking for that for the last 6 months.
What's that?
And we're talking about all the increased costs with WPCA. Where do we stand with?
Thank you. Where do we stand with Lebanon?
Still in litigation.
And is there any outlook as to when there might be some agreement on that? I mean, we can't keep going down the road forever, eating all the expense that we're eating based on what we're being told by our representative that goes to those meetings.
We're getting paid a portion. They just don't agree with the total on how
We're not getting, according to what we were told, we're getting paid the same as we've been getting paid for several years,
that
nothing has gone up.
in my mind is you're getting a portion of what they feel they're,
But the portion is not representative,
Right.
is what we're being told.
and that's in litigation.
Understand, but we need that additional money.
Yeah, I can't say anything more than I've talked to the town attorney and he's given, I can have him put that in writing what the holdup is, but it's not being ignored. It's just, and I can have Kevin write you, what he knows about it this much or this far along. But yeah, I talked to the town attorney about that about a month ago. And I said, hey, this has been going on a long time, but he gave some rationale and I apologize. I don't remember what it was, but as soon as he told me, it made sense, even though it's dragging on. But we can get that information in writing and get that to you.
I have a couple more questions on the WPCA. I think the town, not only are we adding funds to our budget to give to them to support a part-time director there, part-time person, but we're also utilizing some of the town staff to help support administrative duties, or at least
Yes.
that's my understanding.
Yep.
And so do you have a page that represents that information so that we know what the town is directly contributing, or town hall is directly contributing? Because I think that they more than likely should be increasing their fees at a higher rate so that we don't have to pay that on a regular basis.
Yeah, we don't have that broken down. We do the collections in the tax department for the sewer usages. Then we also do a little bit of administrative work. This was subsidized years prior when the director was the actual WPCA and he had his staff do it. So it was kind of subsidized in the salary of the public works director along with a stipend or the amount that was from the WPCA. The budget that is in the book, I think they're going up $30 or $40 on their costs. So I think they are adjusting it and they're going to have that. When do they meet in June to vote on that? They're a little bit outside of,
Last year, yeah.
they're a little bit outside of our, but he's given us the budget and what they're proposing and the increase. But, and then you had asked a bunch of questions that I had him directly answer a couple meetings ago. I had Kevin reach out to you. I don't know if that fulfilled your request or not.
The response was really so that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance would be informed about what the WPCA is doing or potentially not doing.
Yep.
So those questions more than likely should be covered by whoever is going to present their budget for us so that we can review that information for transparency.
Okay, so I'm hearing that you'd like to have the WPSA do a presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
Please. I think we've asked for that for several years. I think it's important since it's not just the administrative assistance that we're giving them or the, money towards a position, but the town people are contributing taxes to pay for the bond issuance for the upgrade or the maintenance of the system, really. And there's a second phase coming. So there's no funds within their WPCA coffers to pay for this, and the townspeople pay for that. So they should be here, they should be represented, they should be questioned. And the other thing, have they done an analysis of what their constituents are paying for services versus similar services in other towns?
Yes, once again, I'll let them answer that question.
Okay.
I believe they have, but let him
Okay.
give the proof. I know when I had opening statements earlier about the WPCA and a possible memo coming from the town planner, they're looking to increase, even services. Just we have joint facilities, which is based out of East Hampton, and they come around, they service the pump stations and things like that. And they want a drastic increase in that. So we're fighting that. And they've made I think reduced it by 30,000, excuse me, already. But we want to continue to look at that. And that's why I suggested possibly a revamping of that, going to a regional board like we do with the health district. So we have more a voice at the table versus a subsidiary to a percentage of flows through another town. I don't think that's working for anybody anymore. So, but I'll gladly reach out to them and see if they can come in and present. I'm sure they can.
This was a discussion at last year's board presentations that the Board of Finance was recommending that at least, in some semi-regular time frame that the WPCA report to the selectmen as they're named by the people on that commission are named by the Board of Selectmen. Board of Selectmen at any time can ask for updates.
Absolutely.
And so the recommendation last year was for that to happen in 2024, 2025. I'm not sure that it has.
So, Mr. Chairman, I believe we had the WPCA come in and present. So I believe they did come in after
they?
their request.
Okay.
But once again, I'm
Sorry,
willing to
Mr.
bring them in again.
Okay.
Bring it in.
Can you add to what Diane's asked for? 2 years ago, we spoke about the fact that the major projects in other towns, there are funds set aside for major projects. There are no funds set aside for major projects here. The whole burden falls on the town. And even as somebody on the sewer line, people that are getting those services should be paying a larger share than, yes, there are benefits to the town for town facilities, et cetera, that use the waste system. But the average taxpayer should not be paying the same, my opinion, and in the practice in most other towns that I've talked to. But if we don't have the rate high enough or the expenses controlled, we're never going to build that number. I mean, obviously, I agree that we have to get a comparison so we know where we are, and if we're way high or way low, we have to adjust for whatever that takes. So I'd be curious as to, do they have an intention of at some point putting money aside for major projects?
Yeah, once again, I'll have them
Yeah.
come and answer that question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Did they report on that at all when they were reporting to the Board of Selectmen?
I believe they answered all the questions that were asked. We put it in writing, and they come in and they did a presentation. I think it was Hamburger was presenting and
I
they
don't remember all the details, but yeah, I think you bring up the bigger issue, which is we have significant cost pending and they have no funds in which to pay. Therefore, the burden comes back to the town. And is that a proportional burden that that all the towns should pay, or should we be looking at then the expense going back to the users, or at least to have that discussion? So that seems to be the time. I mean, it seems to be a good refresh.
Yeah, and as hopefully you're picking up the content, what I'm saying is that's kind of a board that is in need of some help. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And we're looking to maybe revamp that and how they operate and possibly come to a regional type of thing with new guidelines, there's new language. Right now we're a percentage. And if there's a repair in Colchester, we have to pay through there. But now, as I said, Joint Facilities in East Hampton has changed their mind for what they're charging. They doubled or tripled it, and we're crying foul. So we hear you. We only have 3 or 4 members on that commission. I guess it's not as popular as some other ones. No pun intended, but we need to get them in here and get that straightened out.
I would just be careful to not leap into the regional boat, because we have seen how sometimes that doesn't always benefit the largest rower. We see that sometimes in RAM. We see that sometimes in other regional conglomerations. And being, a fairly large rower. Now, again, if we're in with Colchester and East Hampton, maybe we're not the biggest anymore. So maybe we would benefit like Andover and Marlborough do. So maybe it's a good thing for us. But I'm just hesitant to jump into a regional boat when we don't even have a really firm grasp of how a well-run organization should look like within our own town. So just my 2 cents.
Well noted. It's just talks at this time. They were basing it upon a comparison of the health district, which is by per capita. A lot of things that we do regionalize are by per capita, and it's just the same amount, and you just pay by your population. Or in this case, it could be users or a portion of, but.
You bring up a good point about, when I think about it, is we have 2 issues. We have the go forward structure, which is really not a pertinent budget issue at this moment. Not going to, because we can't solve for that at the same time we're talking about the budget. So I see it as just an opportunity to make sure we differentiate between those 2 issues. One, the go forward structure and how it should look and how we can support it and all that, versus how do we plow through the budget element of it, at least in this fiscal year. So maybe that's something that we've got to put on an agenda for at some point to at least get the board refreshed on the structure and all that, not particular to the budget discussions, because we'll get distracted within the budgetary part of it, which probably is not really prudent,
Right.
if we start hitting both issues at the same time in a budget discussion.
And that's why I put that offsetting money into, I'll try to help with that
Yeah.
position, because right now it's kind of, not working properly. So
Yeah, maybe
Trying
we
to-
could just think about that for a future Board of Selectmen meeting, at least to
Sure.
do that. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we can jump into the CIP presentation. Is somebody here? Is somebody going to be here to present open space?
Why isn't
Jim's going to do that? Okay.
I'm not sure. I think that might be what
Okay.
I thought Brian.
Okay. I'm going to think then you're probably correct.
We can ask him, he's back.
Yeah. Jim, you're here. We're not ready for you yet, but are you the presenter for open space?
My question to you is Brian going to be doing the PowerPoint presentation remotely?
Oh, he's going to do it remotely?
I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, we didn't hear him, did we?
Is he showing?
Is he on there?
Not on. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. Are we ready to go, Donna? Okay. So here's the CIP proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26. Town manager recommended. March 4th, 2025. There's that big number. That's what everybody requested originally when they first submitted All their department requests, $9,620,973. CIP recommendations for 25-26, road resurfacing, Douglas Library parking lot, Hebron Green design, that's a steep grant match. Improvements, replace the ambulance stretchers, Parks and Recreation master plan, senior center, parking, drainage, and repaving for a total of $892,534. And next is the CIP revenue recommendations, a balance from the previous appropriations. And if you want to know what that is, that's in the budget book as well. I'll show you where that money came from. So that's $184,169. Loan sub funding we receive, we offset with that. Funding from other sources, the public safety fund is at $11,400. Interest is $30,000, and general fund contribution is the $564,736. Once again, totals $892,534. Hebron road maintenance is, we have 80 miles of town-owned road, which equates to 160 lane miles, and approximately 20 some odd miles of state road that we don't maintain. Continuing with timely maintenance is more cost effective than deferring until deteriorated. Safer roads to travel, quicker emergency responses, including snow, more comfortable ride, less wear on the vehicles, and efficient economical preservation of our largest town asset. Douglas Library with a nice picture there. Thank you, Donna. This is to finalize after now that the pedestrian bridge went in. I'm going to incorporate that. We held off with the parking lot. So now we want to repave the library parking lot. The project will be coordinated with the Hebron Green pedestrian connections and paving improvements project funded in the 2023 steep grant application. Hebron Green Design Services. This is a required match of funds for Hebron Green pedestrian connections and parking improvements project, 2023 steep grant. Improved parking, sidewalk restoration, and extension to be coordinated with the library parking lot project. Courthouse improvements. It's a very old structure. Jim can contest to that. Structure improvements required for building integrity. Historical building, 1850s, houses the town's planning and land use offices. Health and safety employees and visitors. Potential funding through previous ARPA allocation. Once again, the fire department is looking to replace the ambulance stretchers and lift. Senior center parking lot is in pretty rough shape, so I think it's pertinent that we go down there and we do that. Reclaim, grade, pave upper and lower parking lots, address drainage issues, and resolve hazardous conditions. Parks and Recreation Master Plan, they've asked that we put this in there. I think it got support from the Board of Selectmen, so that's in there. The CIP 5-year plan, we have to have that, so it's more heavily concentrated for this year's request. You can see there's a couple items that are whited out for potential possible alternative funding or financing. So if we were going to do a bond package or something, we could hopefully pick up some of the items that got dropped off, because that $9 million was something that was not going to pass, at least in my mind. Once again, CIP 5-year plan shows the two schools. There's a box in the middle. Shows that both those schools need those brick wall window replacements at Gilead and Hebron Elementary. CIP 5-year plan again. Second page shows the library, the senior center, planning and development, and miscellaneous. And this is a CIP historical funding. Charts are always informative. You see the numbers. The dollar amount is, in the blue, and then you can see the percentages down below. We never really hit our goal, but we do the best that we can and try to keep it affordable to live here. future needs. Thank you, Donna. Plans for future possible use of bonding to support capital needs and other projects. We know we're probably going to do a bonding package at some point. So in order to get that number down, we did a little creative thinking. We got some public works facility stuff coming up. We're still looking for a fire truck. We're hopefully going to get some bond money and some, federal grant monies, but we continue to wait to hear. Hebron Board of Ed roof projects at Gilly Hill School. Hebron Board of Ed HVAC projects at both schools. A large dump truck. A street sweeper, that's a 93 or 96, like 30 years old. And facility needs at town buildings. So that's the CIP. I don't know if there's any questions on that.
I need the microphone. Very quickly. Years ago, our CIP plan was originally figured to be at a percentage of the town budget. We are way off on that. What was that original
5%.
percent? And we are at what now?
That bar chart or that chart showed it.
1.32.
Okay, so if we can survive with this kind of a CIP budget, we're doing really good.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to be, the shell game, but we're trying to get this in the budget. But as we have in the past, we're going to have to pick up possibly some paving, as you could hear. And like I said, we had a bad winter. So if we could get caught up on some paving and we buy some of those larger ticketed items that we've been kind of kicking the can down the road, we'll see. But hopefully.
I know it's too early at this point to really be able to gauge the damage that was done, but and Hebron is not alone in this at all. This winter's with the rains, the freeze thaw cycles, the state's roads have just taken a terrible beating. Is there any kind of idea as to what type of damage was inflicted on Hebron's roads at this time? Or do we have to wait until the freeze thaw cycle is done?
Exactly. We got to wait for them to settle back down. I know we have a pretty big issue out on Skinner Lane with probably the worst frost heave I've seen in Hebron since I've been here, which is early, in the 90s. So it heaved up pretty good. It's probably going to have to, do something with that road. We're out there temporarily fixing it now, but it was almost impassable due to, rutting and heaving. I think they're going to do some more paving out there tomorrow. And this is not the time of year to pave, but the road's that bad that we had to get out there.
Are the plants open?
Yeah, there's one plant up past Hartford that runs once a week just for emergency type stuff, like for trenching and stuff like that.
Thank you.
I know we discussed this at a previous meeting, but maybe just for those that might be starting to join the conversation in the public, and maybe for Lori, in simple terms, like we mentioned bonding. How does bonding impact the taxpayer? Because, we started with 9.6 million and now we're down to what we think is a palatable, critical number for the budget. But those that might, again, be tuning in for the first time, maybe we could just repeat again how we think about bonding and how that can impact the taxpayer.
Yeah, so bonding is something that municipalities use as a tool. And the reason we're suggesting that, we knew that some of our debt was going to come off. And it's a good practice to try to keep, your budget flatline instead of the big peaks and valleys as we discussed at the last meeting. So we've got some debt coming off. We know we got some more sewer stuff coming. We got some roofs and some HVAC stuff coming up. We've been trying to get a public works facility for quite a while now. So we know we're going to do something. It's not abnormal to piggyback a couple $1 million worth of paving. We did it the last time when we did the sewers. We did the fire stations. We did the school parking lots. And then some roads to get us, try to catch us back up. The report card for your road is called the PCI. It's a pavement condition inventory. And a good PCI or a report card for a municipality would be like a 70% or higher. If your roads get a 70% or higher, you're doing your job. If you let roads fall below a 60%, it's cost you twice as much. It's like a roof on a house. If you fix it when it's leaking, you save any interior damage to the house. But like a road, if you don't fix it when you see signs or maintain it, it's double or triple the cost to redo the whole thing. So we're trying to keep some roads, maintained versus having to reconstruct these roads. So bonding helps us do that. We get behind because as Danny stated, we're not at that 5%. We're at 1%, 2%, 3%, different years. But how we offset that is when we get a bonding program, we backfill it with we paid both schools, elementary schools. We did the fire station, company 3. So that's kind of a way you could try to offset. But the taxpayer really doesn't feel the big hit because of as the bonds get reduced or the amount of money we owe in debt gets reduced, it's time to add more debt to get caught up.
Right, so it's reflected within the budget of the town relative to debt, as opposed to, hey, you're going to get a bigger tax bill.
It's spreading the pain.
Yeah, no, I understand it, but it's just for those that are thinking, okay, the way it was presented, it looks like we might have, at least at this juncture, a potential significant tax increase. And then I'm also hearing bonding. So I just thought it was important to maybe just repeat the basic structure of it. So.
Oh, great question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yes.
Related question, sir, not to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our book usually has the debt service schedule in it. Does this have it?
Yes,
Which section is it?
Section 5, it's in the 5,000s.
Oh, you're good.
She has it all.
It's right under page 37 in the 5.
Oh, it's not in color this year.
Under tab 5 or
Section
5,000?
5,000.
Tab 5,000.
3 pages in.
Right after page 37. is
Okay.
the debt schedule.
And so that's what you're asking for? Peter?
Yeah, I just thought.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, I just was thinking about the debt schedule relative to potentially adding more debt and making sure the public understood the potential impact on them as individuals as they think about going to the polls. Hey, is it going to be something that's going to whip around, next year that I'm not sure, and making sure we just slow it down enough to keep reiterating the basic concepts and the potential impact on the taxpayer, debt service versus direct tax impact. So that's all. I just
Great question.
slowing it down. That's all.
If I can add to that, when we are going to bond, we can bond for different periods of time too. You certainly don't want to bond for longer than the asset is going to not need additional work. But I mean, a brick and mortar building is going to last longer than a vehicle. Roads, I would have to defer to our town manager. He knows much more about those than we do. But I mean, we've typically bonded for, I think, 20 years, but we can go longer, we can go shorter. And it all has to meld together and it all has to be part of our package when we go to bond.
So the schedule is showing that the current budget year that we're in, the debt service that we're paying is 843,000 change. The year before it was 1.1 million. And so I think that 1.1 million might have been about a high.
Yeah.
So that the taxpayers are paying that. So that's, contributing to that. So go out to debt, that 630,000 would be higher if we issued that debt next for that budget year, right? Depending upon how much debt we took on, what our payments were.
Next
Right,
year.
so just showing
Even
that.
next year, it goes down even more.
Exactly. And it continues to decrease
Right.
now over time.
So by the time if we were to do a bonding package, I wouldn't see it happening before November. So
This is the lowest annual bond payment that I've seen. in
Yes.
my tenure.
Mhm.
So we're in good shape right now. Not that we want to go jack it right way back up, but we're not, and I think we're still AAA rated.
Yes.
So we're in a position where we would get the best rate out there.
It's good to just talk through that. We are positioned to be able to address some of these issues that we're raising. And I think
Yes.
that's why it's good that we're having this conversation. That's all.
The RAM debt came off a couple of years ago, and that's what really dropped our payment,
Yeah,
I think, ultimately.
Good question.
RAM,
RAM.
not refinanced.
A couple of years ago. It continues, Rams continues to go down as well.
Yeah. Now, this year they didn't, no.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
Got it.
years ago they did.
Okay. What did we find out about the, Jim, you've been beckoned?
I'll wing it. I think I can
I
give a
think-
fairly decent synopsis without getting into the particulars.
Okay.
What we can do is ensure that ex post facto, that both respective boards will be forwarded the PowerPoint presentations. That has all the mechanics, structure, the function,
Yeah.
accomplishments.
You'll see it on the screen.
Can I see it on the screen?
Yeah, you will, well, it will be on the screen.
All right. Yeah, I can do a quick walk over it. It's, you know, it's a precips or locutor. It speaks for itself.
Maybe easier.
For the benefit of the public, I can try to go through this rapid fire. I did have a
Appreciate
few
that.
comments.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. I did have a few comments. I always carry a Plan B with me, no matter where I am or what I do. And essentially, they capture the essence of this presentation and perhaps the rationale for our existence. I'm here on behalf of the Open Space Land Acquisition Committee. And we want to talk about open space land acquisition planning, policies, priorities, accomplishments, benefits, and ongoing activities. And we'll try to keep this rapid fire. Our open space land acquisition was adopted on 4 June 1998 by a town ordinance and established a land acquisition fund, and it provided for the appropriations on an annual basis and other means of funding. Initially, that equated under statute 7-131R to the equivalency of 1/2 of 1 mil. And at the time, that was upwards of 200,000. And over the past 27 years, that figure has bounced around according to the needs and the sensitivities of the town from year to year. The lean years, it was less, and the good years, it was a little more. And we entirely understand that dynamic. And it did establish also this ordinance, an open space land acquisition committee, and unidentified responsibilities. And it did set forth a parcel recommendation and approval process. We are advisors de facto to the Board of Selectmen and to the people of this town in their decision-making process. And we did, I'd be remiss, I suppose, not to mention that we've got a committee membership that's a rather impressive brain trust. There were a couple of citizens at large there. We do have representation from the key boards, namely the Board of Finance, Conservation Commission, and the Board of Selectmen. We've got a representative from the Park and Rec Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we're looking for a lot of different lenses when we make our considerations of prime candidates. We've got really a threefold division of labor here. That would be an agriculture subcommittee, which meets ad hoc, and that was really toward farmland preservation. Resource protection subcommittee, and that was to protect the natural resources, our wildlife, our water courses, our forests, our water quality in areas of special concern. We've got a recreation subcommittee, which speaks for itself, and this is for the provision of active and passive recreational opportunities. We're guided by the town's blueprint, the plan of conservation and development, and also the Inland Wetland Agency's riparian corridor protection areas. and the state plan of conservation and development. So we operate really within the realm of several different bodies of regulation. And we do assist in the acquisition of certain parcels where appropriate. If not at our hand, then on somebody else's nickel, like the state of Connecticut, if they want to do an outright purchase. We're there to provide assistance in terms of appraisals and other technical expertise. We've got various policies that we adhere to, and we're essentially consistent with these aforesaid documents. That's the first policy, as I just mentioned. Policy 2 is we acquire parcels to create large blocks of preserved land, and we connect these blocks into greenway corridors, and we can join them to existing state and town properties wherever possible. And this is to preserve not just the rural ambiance of the town, but wildlife corridors and a protection of large aquifer zones that are laced throughout the town. And we always consider multiple uses where possible, hearkening back to those 3 divisions of labor that I had just indicated. We do have partnerships with the state where we have provided surveys, fund appraisals, partial purchase funds, and we do offer technical services. We encourage, again, state purchases wherever possible on their nickel, because these lands, once purchased, are for the benefit of all the people in the state. They're not necessarily Hebron specific or entirely for Hebron residents. These public lands belong to the people, as Teddy Roosevelt would say. And our top preservation priorities are watercourse, water body protection, farmland preservation, and the extension of existing open space properties, and more recently, the airline trail corridor and connections. And we do have a consortium of approximately 13 towns in this quarter of the state that cooperate with this and work with the DEP, even in terms of maintenance. It's a shared responsibility, the improved trails that we walk through and that our citizens love so much. We've had quite a few accomplishments, some of the more contemporary and larger ones with the Burnt Hill Park for our active recreational complex, the Raymond Brook Preserve. That's held dearly, particularly by our seniors and those who are movement challenged. It's just a beautiful asset, and a lot of people have taken ownership of this. And we hope to have a dog park in there soon as well to try to satisfy all constituencies and people having all interests. And the Raymond Brook Marsh was purchased, and that's to ensure water quality protection for the provision of water throughout various areas of town, and particularly here in town to facilitate downtown business and mixed-use development. We have to have somebody in here to pay the bills to provide us with the revenues, ultimately to pay for some of these beautiful projects and programs, and we yield to that. And we're so glad that the focus is on the center of town. That's the way we set this up 40 years ago. We didn't want the entire hinterland inundated with a bunch of, there used to be a word for it, but the zoning was just out of control in a lot of towns where things went willy-nilly, and it really upset the aesthetics and the character of these communities. So we're truly blessed in that respect, that we've had a lot of people with foresight and the motivation and the heart to leave a legacy to future generations from all quarters of the state, from all groups. We've got some beautiful forests here, as you know. When you think of Hebron being largely an agricultural community, you think of cornfields and cows and barns and farmers markets and produce stands. But one of the major products that we provide would be the production of oxygen through our greenery here. And with global warming and the need for carbon sequestration and all these other things you're reading about in state and local accounts, we're a very large contributor to that. Back under the Rowland administration, the goal was to preserve 21% of all of Connecticut's lands as public lands. And Hebron's at 27%, but that doesn't say that we're way over and above the benchmark. Other towns don't have the land available to preserve. So more is expected out of a lot of the rural communities, a lot of these Eastern Connecticut green towns. Our accomplishments are many. I'm not going to go through these, the whole litany here ad nauseum, but you'll see that on the handouts and in the presentations that'll be sent to you. We did get a conservationist award for our land acquisition committee back in 2023. And we pride ourselves at being one of the leaders here in Connecticut with our land preservation efforts. Again, I don't want to keep reading laundry lists, but there's a very good synopsis of the farmlands and open space lands that have been preserved in Connecticut. So here in Hebron, we preserved at our hand 1,064 acres. State of Connecticut preserved with their resources 478 acres. There was the purchase of development rights, and so that amounted to 604 acres. And then the Mohegan Land Trust had transferred upon its demise 220 acres to the town. So total acreage is acquired since the program's inception has been a little bit under 2,400 acres. That would be both local and state. The statistics speak for themselves, and I'm not going to burden you with too many numbers at this point when you can review these at your discretion when those PowerPoint presentations are sent to you. Fiscal impact has been rather interesting. I'll get right into open space benefits. Basically, it enhances home values, it mitigates property tax increases, it provides for recreational areas, both passive and active, it provides a desirable setting for harmonious economic growth, and it promotes eco and agro tourism for the benefits of local businesses. And there is a bunch of collateral benefits as well that are served. The preservation of forests and productive farmland soils. That's the next most scarce thing besides potable water that our planet embraces. We provide for scenic vistas. We preserve areas of cultural heritage. We protect natural resources, including the clean air and the drinking water that I just mentioned. We provide wetland buffers, which absorb pollution from pesticides, fertilizers, and runoff. We provide certainly habitat for wildlife. We're not the only inhabitants of this community, and we are mitigating the effect of climate change. So Hebron's really gone over and above expectations there. The fund balance status, you can read that for yourselves. Our ongoing activities include the pursuit of connections with the airline trail to the Hebron Business District. There's a fine marriage there to pursue other trail connections and participate in regional trail initiatives, to continue to extend greenway connections, reevaluate priority parcels, site walks on key parcels, discussions with landowners, which is a ongoing thing, and to seek state grants and to continue contact with State Deep regarding acquisitions. And I just want to get into the heart of the matters. And this is for me. I carry this around just in case. And I guess that rainy day has come. But in addition to frugal spending and thoughtful business development, a community has several balancing tools to achieve good services and acceptable taxes. They include farmland preservation and open space acquisition. Since the inception of Hebron's land acquisition program in 1998, 1,234 acres this is the latest update, of Hebron's forests and dry land and tillable earth have been permanently preserved through purchases with town funds, through state property and development right purchases, and through our dollar multiplier matching grant partnerships with the state of Connecticut, and through some very generous land donations. As a footnote, we should expect that federal funding to the states for the purchase of conservation lands will diminish or probably disappear very soon, and there could be a collateral effect on municipalities, and that's just the reality that we face. Had the foregoing acreage been developed for residential dwellings, our school and municipal infrastructure expenditures and our rate of taxation would be much higher than it is now. There was a cost of community survey study done back in 2009, and it stated basically that for each dollar that's brought in through single-family residential home property taxes, towns must pay out at least $1.16 to provide the corresponding educational and municipal services. Since this is a rather antiquated study, you can assume that that foregoing expenditure is much higher now. And this observation really underscores the importance of maintaining Hebron's land acquisition fund. Our set-aside was originally established through near unanimous acclamation at a meeting attended by more than 200 people. There, the electorate directly and vigorously articulated their conviction that maintaining Hebron's rural aura was one of their chief quality of life goals. And over these past 27 years, Hebron's Land Preservation Commitment has been repeatedly validated a town meeting property acquisition votes, annual budget votes, and public opinion surveys. And Andy, thank you for always being in our corner on that. You've done the best you can, and you guys and your predecessors have really done yeoman's work on that. But fields, farms, woodlands, and agrarian ambiance were and still are the attributes that have attracted people to reside here. The founders of our open space land acquisition program harbored a concern that future boards and commissions might lose their resolve to maintain annual funding, yielding to the financial problems and pressures of the day and other competing budgetary interests. We're hopeful that this won't be the case this year. And over time, residents and the community power structure should be occasionally reminded of the strength of the political will that created the open space programs in Connecticut and here in Hebron. So local set-asides are not government expenditures. They comprise a savings and investment account that provides us with an affordable rapid response capability when rare purchase opportunities come about. And I would also note that our open space appropriation that was initially requested represents, and it's a little lower than that actually, 1/4% of Hebron's overall municipal budget. This program is immeasurably important given its forests and wetlands. Hebron's topography and undisturbed vegetation are among the state's maximal contributors to oxygen production, carbon storage, the mitigation of global warming, wildlife protection, flood control, and again, the protection of our groundwater. And as proud and very fortunate residents, many of us are incredibly grateful for the privilege of having lived here and having raised our children in small town America. Hebron's descriptive motto is timeless beauty. Previous generations in Connecticut, through their preservation efforts and genuine concern for those unknown and those unborn, have left us with this rural legacy. It must be upheld and balanced very delicately with any manner of conservation and sensitive growth that we pursue. And we must pass this great gift on to our children and anyone else who wishes to come here, along with every other opportunity for happiness and success. Thanks.
Jim, outstanding job. Thank you so much for obviously your commitment to the town over many, many years, but also your willingness to step up and present when you didn't realize you were going to be able to do that. Have to do that. So thank you very much. You represented yourself and the committee very well. So thank you very much. It's not always easy to do. So thank you. I think one of the things that I wanted to ask, and just thinking again back to how do we make sure, again, those that might be engaging into this process for the first time. So this is land acquisition. A lot of times what I hear is, okay, well, how are we then maximizing that land acquisition with the maintenance of the land acquisition, the signage, I mean, I love it. My wife and I and Ellie, the dog, are on the Mohegan Land Trust piece almost every day. And we're very thankful no one else knows about it because we're the only ones there. But all that aside, Andy, how do we sort of prioritize and fund for the maintenance of this? Because obviously there's an intersection with, once we go from acquisition to town. So maybe just, again, for the public, so how does that work?
So what we presently have now is we put some set aside in the Parks and Recs budget to maintain some of the trails, signage.
Yeah.
When we get open space, there's requirements that certain things are on a calendar or schedule have to be done. You have to do A2 surveys, which we just completed one on the O'Connor property, signage, entrance, parking. There's certain things that go along with getting those funds from the state. But the actual maintenance of the open space right now is barely funded through contribution from the budget to Parks and Rec. Several years ago, we tried to introduce a forestry management plan that would possibly produce some income, but the income, if at all, was to be just given back to the actual maintenance of the open space properties. And that was supposed to be governed underneath the open space land acquisition, water, inlands, wetlands, and then planning and zoning to choose, one parcel you may want to not do anything on. Other parcels you may want to do a thinning, but it was still another way to not try to generate income for the town, but at least enhance the forest. It's been told, it's a good practice to maintain your forest. And if there was any type of generation of any type of income, that would stay within the open space or the actual, preservation of the properties that we own. And that never got legs. It got shut down.
Chairman, overall maintenance costs have been very, very nominal for our open spaces, particularly the passive recreational parcels that we've purchased over time. We're not necessarily talking about a trail system, for example, that equates to the airline trail, where it's improved and it's packed gravel and very finely engineered. Most of these lands really require the presence of human footfall on already established trails to keep these things in check and from being overgrown. The Parks and Rec has always done a wonderful job, not only on the active recreational parcels of land, but on the passive. And we are held harmless too, I wanted to let you know, in terms of liability for possible injuries on these lands. There is a state statute that saves the town harmless. So it's been a very inexpensive venture. And we figured we're purchasing these properties for future use by future generations as well. And any improvements made to them would be to these properties would be largely made by future generations. So we're not talking big bucks here or any type of liability in a manner of speaking.
There's no question is, as we think back to 1998, there's a lot of pride we should take in the impact that folks had to get us to this point, because you really do wonderful work. And obviously those that were part of that in the past as well. It's something that as a community, we should be very proud of. And ultimately I just, how do we think about this going forward is sort of what as it evolves, are we funding it enough on the town side? Are we improving it enough? Are we prepared? So that's just all part of it. I think a good discussion, but anyway, I turn it over to.
Yeah, well, I'm along the same line as what you were saying. My question is, again, there was that program I was put together that was going to be forest management. And I came from the school, and I used to actually be a state CFS instructor, which talks about environmental and all those types of things. And, we talked about conservation, which means, making better wildlife habitat, improving the biota, of the land, including improving the carrying capacity of the land for the wildlife species. And that does involve, certain amounts of management, in some cases, some cutting, selective cutting, because one of the things that wildlife needs is, of course, a good thick understory, because that's where the smaller animals live. If you can see through 100 acres of woods, nothing grows there except ticks. So would that be something that your group would be handling? If in fact we were to try to do some of these types of projects, which would generate dollars that could then get put back into it, would that be something that Open Space Land Act would be at least involved with?
I think you'd have to talk with the members of the committee. I can't speak for them necessarily on that, but I can tell you that generally we all yield to the realities that trails are going to have to be put in. There's going to have to be some manner of timbering. That's fire breaks, for example, and other public safety issues are going to have to be attended to, as well as parking, which is one of the state requirements when we leverage state funds for the purchase of these properties. Purchasing lands under a program like this and then timbering them would lead some folks to say, well, why set aside these lands at all if you're just going to chop them up and sell them for profit? But if they're for uses that are incidental to the maintenance and the improvement of public properties, that's a horse of a different color.
Well, as I say, I don't think anybody's talking of clear cutting. We're talking more selective cutting, harvesting,
shelterwood method.
again, to help to improve the wildlife habitat, the biota, the basic land itself, making it so that it is actually more usable by all of the different species that are present.
Well, personally, I would attest that this would be nothing more than a parallel of the policies of the state DEEP. They're trying to reintroduce the habitat for the woodcock, the American woodcock, for the cottontail rabbit. And so they want these ecotones. They want these areas where there's a little bit of cutting and brush will revegetate and provide cover for certain species.
Yes.
And that's sound planning. And they're very selective as well when they do their forestry. They're trying to establish, by getting rid of the diseased trees and unwanted species, a rolling cohort, as it were, of different age, different types of trees for the health of the forest. And that method's been used since time immemorial. Some areas, like the real old growth stands of trees, the state's policy, particularly in their Blackledge River tract, parts of which are in Hebron, they just leave alone entirely.
And leave them as is.
So, yeah. So, at some juncture, there probably will be a plan put into implementation. And I personally wouldn't give an outright no to anything like that. And members of my committee, they probably have varied opinions or caveats in their opinions on that. But no, I wouldn't throw anything out the window if it's for the good of the order.
I know we can't, this is not for tonight, but this sounds like it needs to be revisited.
We can revisit it at any time. It's just something that got shelved.
Yeah, well, let's unshelf it, please. The health of the property, we can't be afraid to talk about how we maintain in these lands and make sure they are healthy for generations to come, and to ignore that because we're afraid to talk about cutting trees down. It's a matter of education and understanding how that works. And clearly there's a lot of that to do. I mean, obviously the states do it all the time. They burn forests for the health of the forest. And that would seem shocking if you didn't understand why. And so we should not be afraid to visit that. So and I know you weren't. I remember I was in the
Actually
meetings.
friends with the head professor from Yale, and he wrote us letters on how it's a good idea. And the chairman of Open Space, Brian, was on board with that, and the DEEP has a forestry management.
So when appropriate, it sounds like it makes sense, again, not for tonight, but it sounds like it makes sense that we should be actively talking about this at the appropriate time. So if I could.
as long as these actions are defensible in the eyes of the public. It will be a very sensitive issue to be broached. You have to tread
It was before,
very
but again, we
carefully.
cannot be
Yeah.
afraid to support all this good work over all these years. We cannot be afraid to do what's necessary to support those lands for whether it's the creatures, whether it's future use, all the things that you're talking about.
I was gonna say, we own these properties. We have a responsibility to properly manage and utilize the properties for the best of the purposes that we're talking.
Yeah.
And if it's wildlife and fish and birds, then we should be looking at the needs of those creatures that are using that property as to what's going to be best for them, for their habitat.
I think also if we're going to do this, I think this should be under the guidance, supervision, whatever you want to call it, of Open Space Land Act.
And the Conservation
As
Commission. That's one of the
and
charges.
conservation.
Yeah.
I mean, I know as a former member of Open Space, they do great things for this town. And if we can make our facilities healthier and more accessible to the public, that would be just great. And at the same time, if we do raise any funds, my opinion, and of course it would have to be gone through with all the powers to be, is that any funds should go back into open space.
That was, I believe, the original intent.
Yeah.
Was any funds raised from these
Right.
processes literally go right back in for, again, making it a better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is an inherent check and balance system among the commissions
Absolutely.
that would have oversight. And Mal, you ought to know more than anybody here as a volunteer.
Yeah.
We get a lot of volunteer assistance in this effort. We've got our Hebron Trail Rangers.
Yep.
I believe they're recently designated as a 501c3.
Right.
For fundraising, and they'll be out there assisting Parks and Rec with some light maintenance and some bird dogging of sorts for any possible hazards. Then we've got David Rose.
I was just going to say, David Rose is mapping all the trails
Yes.
electronically, so nobody can get lost out there. He's doing a great job.
HebronPaths.org or the Park and Rec on the town website, and it'll just open a whole array of opportunities for folks wanting to get out there and enjoy what belongs to them, what they paid for.
Jim, one other question. And I had this question come to me from somebody in town last budget season. We got all this land. Well, we don't have all this land, but we have land. And I know that any land purchased with, and this I think came from Michael Leary, any land purchased with monies from the state can only have passive recreation on it, and you
correct.
can't build on it.
That's correct.
The question or the point that was made to me, well, we got all this land, but we can't do anything with it. If we purchase and have we purchased land without state monies, and if lands are purchased without state monies, can there be more things done with them, or because they're under open space?
Absolutely.
You know where I'm going.
That's where the dog park came in. I believe there are half a dozen parcels toward the center of town. I think 4 of which were purchased with state augmentation, which have to remain passive. And they've already been and already are being heavily utilized.
Yep.
But then I believe it was 2 out of those parcels, approximating 65 acres, were actually given to the town for $1 by the state. Initially, RAM was to have been placed on those parcels.
Yeah.
And they decided, no, the existing site where they are was much more suitable. And I know the playing fields came into play too. I think, what, in 1992? We've been around a long time, man. Yeah. And
so if they aren't purchased with state monies, you can do more with them?
Yeah, from the state open space land acquisition fund.
Yeah.
But, for that $1 that the state transferred us over to, we had a free hand in using that for active recreational purposes. And also parts, I believe, of Burnt Hill Park.
We portioned it out, town
Yeah.
funds versus state funds.
Yeah.
So we can do different.
Great information. Thank you.
That opened a door for the ball fields and, all the other nice facilities for the kids to use.
Thanks so much for presenting, Jim. I love that you jumped in kind of last minute, and I do appreciate it. I have just 2 comments, not necessarily questions, but 2 comments that I'd love for you to bring back to your chair and to the commission. The first comment is really about the studies you're citing. So you're citing studies from 2009, and that's 16 years ago.
Yeah.
I would posit that if you had more updated numbers, it would probably be even more beneficial to your commission to know that.
Yes.
I like to work with the most recent numbers as possible. And so I think that's a challenge for me in your presentation, that I'd like to see updated numbers on some of these studies. And I guess just the second comment I make is, Mal knows I ask this every year. The state goal is 21%, last I checked, of land preservation. We're currently at 27%. There's a number in the plan of conservation and development that sets us at 41%. So I guess my broader comment and question that I would again pose to the commission and to your chair is, what percentage is enough? And I have to be honest, I don't think it's necessarily always up to the town. I think the commission should be working toward an active, reasonable numerical goal of a percentage of land preserved. And I don't say that because I don't support open space or the environment. I am well aware that currently in Washington, we're not going to get the kind of support that we need to mitigate things like climate change, to preserve the environment. It's not high on their priority list, and that's pretty clear. But I think it's important as we move forward. We are leaving a legacy to our children, but we also have to make sure that we have enough land to work with for future generations to come. So those would be my two comments that I would encourage you to bring back to the commission. If you want to email me some responses, that's fine too. But they're not necessarily questions, just observations.
Certainly. Tiffany, that's initial study in 2009 was under the aegis of the American Farmland Trust. And it hasn't been updated since then. I don't know that there is any other reliable source to come about with a specific figure. I assume that it's higher. We're always researching, good information that we can hang our hats on. So maybe elsewhere, if we look to other areas for more valid information and more up-to-date information. And on the other point that you had made, you talked of the 41% that was in the current plan of conservation and development. That's a very loose guidance document, and it speaks in ideals very largely. It's not really a Napoleonic code, and they were probably basing their figures on privately owned open space. If it did become available and were not developed, because it is private property, and they've got that right. If it were not developed and a town could afford it, that would probably be the optimal amount of land that we could purchase under a best case scenario. So it's not as though we're hell bent for fury to grab every acre we can until we reach that 41%. Most goals are lofty and they're just that. And they're unattainable, but it's something to set your sights on anyhow and give it your best shot.
I think that's important for the public to hear, because I think there's been a lot of chatter on our board and just in general about the plan of conservation and development. And we all understand it's not a legally binding document, but there are numbers in there and statistics that are in there that need to be accurate and that need to reflect the goals of commissions and of boards. So I would strongly suggest that your commission again look to determine what is a reasonable goal to work for in the next 5 years, the next 10 years. I think that would be very helpful for us. Thank you.
Context. Yeah.
Thank you again. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Very well
Anytime.
done. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Very well done.
Sorry, I'm still shaking. I'm just a good liar.
I was going to say, tell Brian. Yep, that's it.
Brian's, he's a smoother talker. He talks from the heart. You can't top that.
No worries. Thank you. Great job. Thank you. That moves us to section 7. Mr. Tierney on the agenda, miscellaneous general government requests.
Yeah, so it's up to what you guys want to do. What I would suggest, and I've always suggested this, but you guys are in charge. A lot of time and effort went into developing this budget and putting this information in the book. I would request respectfully if you guys would study it. And if you have any questions, please, if you can, submit them to us early prior to the next meeting. and we'll get you the answers and have them ready. We can answer the email when we get the answer, and then still bring it up as dialogue at the meeting. But I think for tonight, some people might want to watch the president. And like I said, there's a lot of information here to study, so it's up to the board, but I think
It's a marathon, right? Not a sprint.
I spent a lot of time with Keith today. I don't know how much more I can take.
I agree.
You've stunned them into silence.
I have one question, just on the, when we met last week, we talked about the recommendation to add a director for facilities. And that's not reflected in the budget. And it's also not reflected in, not being reflected in the budget, right?
The budget was
just too
99% done when that came up. So no,
right.
I did not add anything since that meeting. What we did do is there's some work that has to be done before we do that. I have to have very accurate information, as Tiffany stated. So we pulled some job descriptions from some other towns, and I have to talk with the school to see exactly what their intentions are, because as I stated in the past, and it's not a criticism, the school position where they were overseeing the janitors, and I don't think that's what we're looking for. So I got to kind of refine exactly what we're looking for, and then try to put some numbers to that. So we're working on it, but it's not in the budget as of yet.
Perfect. I just wanted you to talk about it. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else for Andy or the town staff? Okay, Diane, you're good? Okay, that moves us to section 8 on our agenda.
Move to adjourn the Hebron Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, well, just us, right? Board of Selectmen's meeting at 8:56 PM.
Okay, please adjourn. Thank you very much for all the preparation and presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good night.